And namaste, and thank you everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It's an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern and 8 o'clock Pacific. And we apologize today, and let me bring in my co-host, the main host of the show. As that's Utsada. Utsav Chakrabarti Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact. Utsada, welcome on this Sunday. We had a few technical difficulties today where we were, our provider had issues and we were not able to log in on time. We were waiting for to get into our own show. So thank you for joining. This, as I was saying, is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti, of course, everyone knows him. He is a celebrity and a noted intellectual now. I see him every time I turn around, I see him on some show or the other. So Utsada, welcome. Thank you for taking time. And Utsada, and I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. So that today's show is kind of interesting because what we did, as our viewers may remember, I'm just trying to adjust my camera a little bit here. It's a little bit off today, so I something must have changed. But anyway, so that if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a brand new website that we have put out. It's called HinduVote. It is a website we created as in 2020 for the presidential election, and in that website we put together, we give guidance to Hindu voters, and we did a presidential debate from two campaigns. We had representatives coming together and debate the issues that are of importance to Hindus, and it was really well received. So we said, okay, why don't we take the next step? And for the midterms, what we did was we actually created an extensive website, and this website has complete list of all the congressional candidates, and these candidates can now and we sent out a survey, a questionnaire to these candidates, which they filled out and got the answers back in the website. There's also other part of the website where we have a provision where the voters can themselves rank the candidate based on their engagement with the Hindu community. And the third part of the website was the actual ranking of these candidates by Hindu Pact, not really a ranking, but ranking of the positions that they have taken if they were part of the previous Congress. So three components, and I'll bring up the website as the show unfolds. But today what we are going to do, so that is, we are going to talk about the responses that we got from some of these candidates, and a lot of these. So we have quite a few responses actually, and what we are going to talk about is we are going to read out some of these responses to just kind of give you a flavor of what these candidates have to say to the American Hindu voters. And with that, Utsada, welcome. And as I said earlier, you are a institution in Washington, an institution in Washington D.C. You live and breathe elections. You live and breathe politics. Tell us what's going on.
Well, first of all, Ajay bhai, I just wanted to thank you for the immense amount of hard work you put on the HinduVote website that, I hope all our viewers have seen. And we should probably put the link down here. There's still 2 more days to elections, so
Absolutely,
people
and
can benefit.
we are still getting responses, right? It's we are
Yeah,
still
yeah.
getting the responses.
And
Absolutely.
it is an extremely useful tool if you haven't seen it yet. And based on your zip code, you can based on your address, you can see who your candidates are, what their responses are, and what American Hindus need to look out for in their candidates. So having said that, I think today's show, dedicated to the hundreds of responses we got in written form from so many candidates, it was worth analyzing them. And it is worth more analyzing them, not just because we get to know about what candidates think, but it is also worth analyzing because we get to know about how we should interact in future elections with our candidates, in 2024, when there is going to be a major national election, presidential election, along with the congressional seats, we will be in a better position to interact and ask of these candidates based on many of these questions that they have answered now. So, Ajay, do you want to bring it up and we can
I
go from
will. I will bring it up. So here is the website. Uh, while I bring this up, Uttada, I want to ask you this general question. Um, you live in DC. What is the how are the winds blowing in Washington DC when
there? Well,
2 days before the elections?
yeah.
What is
So
the general sentiment in
usually,
DC?
usually midterms are always against the incumbent, uh, and given that the current administration under President Biden hasn't covered itself with glory in almost most parameters of governance, whether it is internal governance or foreign policy, and that is my analysis of it. uh, I believe that it will be very hard for the current administration and the Democrats to hold on to their seats, or at least hold on to their majority in the House, and is a highly likely, a very high possibility that they will also lose the little bit of balancing they had in the Senate, and the Senate might end up getting over to the Republican side. So, going forward, what that means is the next 2 years of President Biden's administration, it is highly likely it's going to be even less effective. As as uh, as impossible as it sounds, it will be even less effective in its administration work than it is right now, and that's my prediction.
Well, I was looking at some of the poll numbers, and if you guys, our viewers, many of whom are very, not many of them, all of them are very political savvy. That's why they watch this show. So I was looking at I was looking at a couple of websites. One of them is, if you have not seen it before, it's called realclearpolitics.com. It's a non-partisan kind of website. It has they've very carefully balanced the Democratic and the Republican views, and there are 50% of the articles that are Democratic, 50% of the articles that are Republican facing, some independent, some libertarian, and all of that. But what is more noteworthy website on that particular website is they aggregate the scientific polls that are conducted across America, and then when they aggregate these polls, the aggregate poll numbers, and they average them, and the average poll numbers show that I believe that the latest polls that I saw yesterday give Republicans edge on 54 to 55 seats in Senate, and they give them and the
You mean in the House?
85%
In the House, 54 to 55 in the House.
in the Senate,
Oh,
up
you
to
mean the
50
total of 54
total number
seats?
of seats.
Oh.
Republicans can get up to 55, either 54 or 55 seats, depending on when you aggregate solids and leanings together. Whereas in the case of House, they give House, and they rely on various surveys, but they also rely on. There's also a website called 538 .com, and if you look at the surveys over there, the Republicans have 85% chance of capturing House. So this is sorry, Republicans have 85% of probability of capturing House in terms of majority. So this is a consequential election. It is, in some ways, it restores the balance of power between the two parties, because now you have checks and balances in place. But I did bring up our website, and let me share this website with people who have not seen it before. You'll see this is our website. It's called HinduVote.org. It is, and if you look at this, if you it, you know, there's a voter guides, there's some articles, there's some explanation of what are the Hindu American Hindu issues, why are they important, why do we engage with legislators, why your vote matters, some of the tools for voters, and a lot of work that we have done in past in this area, whether it's elections, the congressional actions, some of these HinduLounge shows that are related to voter education and election 2022. So that if we go to the section where it says check out our our a unique resource, Congressional Elections 2022 American Hindu Voters Guide. So I'll click on that, and here we see a brand new website that we were talking about, where you would see the voters guide. There are videos, articles, press releases, resources, and some election tools. And there are also some ways to engage with the with the legislators and the candidates. So if you were to enter your address, and I'll enter address of our VHPA Chicago office is 200 New Bond Street in Sugar Grove, Illinois. So I picked Sugar Grove, Illinois from this address. It fills out the zip code for you, and once you fill it, it will take you to a page where all the candidates in that constituency are listed. You pick a candidate that you'd like. There are also let's say Senate candidates and the House of Representative candidates. Let's say you want to look at Tammy Duckworth. Uh, so you click on Tammy Duckworth, and here in the first part, you can take this survey and you can say, just to indicate if this particular candidate, Tammy Duckworth in this case, is engaged with the Hindu community or not. And there are 5 questions ranging, and your answer can range from strongly disagree to strongly agree. There are also questions that we have sent out to Tammy about some of them general questions, Hindu hate, about educational opportunities, immigration policy, international human rights, foreign policy, and some of the environmental policies, gun control, abortion, etc. And then we have rated Tammy Duckworth's voting record if she was eligible to vote for a particular resolution. Right? So that is the overview of the survey. Your thoughts before we actually go to the um, actual responses that we got from these candidates on the survey that we sent out.
So if you go up a little bit, Ajay bhai, I just wanted to break down how comprehensive this was for a person. So the first part actually is your responses. Go up further. Go up further. Is your So as a constituent, if you had any interaction with the congressperson, then you would be filling out this, and that would add to the view survey response. So that will give an average voter in that constituency your opinion on Tammy Duckworth. So that was the first parameter, which was because you as a voter is the key component of this survey. Then if you go next, it is the candidate questionnaire. So the fact that Tammy hasn't given us back a response after having received our questionnaire shows that she's may not be that engaged with the Hindu communities, or doesn't feel it important to respond to the questionnaires of the Hindu community. So that's a parameter. There are hundreds of candidates who filled out this questionnaire and gave a response. Then if you go further down, uh, because she's in the Senate, uh, there was only one resolution out of these defining ones that reached the Senate. The others did not even reach the Senate. So that one resolution that reached the Senate, she did not vote on it. So it is not applicable. The other ones are not even responded to, it doesn't fill up because these resolutions never reached the Senate. So as a Senate candidate, Tammy Duckworth did not have a say in it. But if you look at a congressional candidate, based on their voting, the other ones would also have some kind of a response, and that response would be a parameter for you to measure if that candidate was pro or anti-Hindu. Now, for example, if let's say an HRES 764, if the candidate has, for example, in a congressional candidate's case, let's say Raja Krishnamurthy, he sponsored the resolution HRES 764. So in his case, you will see a thumbs up next to him, because that's a parameter where festival of Diwali was introduced as a celebration in the house, and that's a positive thing for the community. So we put it as a thumbs up. So that gives you in a gist of how we looked at every constituency that is going to polls. And once again, I we haven't had as much feedback from the community as we should have. I'll be honest with you. It could be partially because we were not successfully able to reach enough people, and it could be also be partially because our community is not that engaged in the electoral process through these tools, because this is a new tool. This is the first time it has come. But as we are doing this show, I just want to remind everybody that this is a tool that is of critical importance to the community, for every Hindu to be educated, and who is, who should be aware of things. so that's my 2 minutes on this, Ajay bhai. And I once again.
So I want to say one thing, and that is, I think in general, the Hindu community is not engaged. So let me take a step back. In general, a lot of people are not engaged in the midterms. The voting percentage is very low. In some places, it's in 20s or 30s. In some places of consequence, it's more than that. It is not like 70, 60, 70% of the people are going out to vote. On top of it, I think, as you mentioned, the Hindu community in general is not as engaged. They may go out and vote in greater numbers, but Hindu community is not as engaged in the political process itself. So going to the rallies, there's some very active Hindus. I went to one. I went to a rally where I live, last week, and there were about, out of about, I would say, about 300-400 people for a congressional candidate. There were about uh, 6 to 7 Hindus over there. So these are very politically astute, politically active Hindus, but the number of people who are actually engaged in this kind of political process itself is not very high. And then you take a subset of that and you say, how many of these will actually go and use a brand new tool? That number is significantly lower. So I completely understand why the engagement level on our survey to the voters is low. But that itself kind of shows us the work that is ahead of us in 2024 elections, because these are the voters we want to ensure they become more engaged in the political process, because Hindu vote matters, and Hindu vote has to be, has to be heard. Especially, Hindu vote is going to decide the elections in battleground states. And I was talking to the state chair of one of the political parties in Pennsylvania last week, and I told the chair that, look, I mean, uh, Hindu vote in a battleground state like Pennsylvania is going to decide who is going to be a senator and who is going to be a governor, and who is going to, and some of the key congressional races, who is going to win or lose. So we don't have, we are not making unreasonable demands, but we want to make sure that the Hindu phobia is addressed, and we want to make sure that the Hindu community um, gets its, some of the key issues addressed. For example, if the resolution on genocide in Bangladesh comes up, or if there are, human rights violations against minor girls in Pakistan who are abducted and, converted and married off to men 3 or 4 times their age. These are the issues we expect a response from, you know we expect a response from the congressional leaders. All right, with that, Utsada, can we transition over to the survey results that everyone is waiting for? We can start anywhere you want to start from, and anywhere you want to do this. If you want to start with uh,
Ajay bhai,
the
we were going to look at the survey questionnaire, not the results, right? Or are
well,
we?
no,
Yeah,
not survey, survey questionnaire and responses. I meant. I'm
responses.
sorry.
Yeah. So
My
so
apologies.
questionnaire
Yeah,
responses. And
questionnaire
the
responses.
reason we decided to do that is because questionnaire gives you a very good indicator of what many of the candidates are thinking, and what they think about us, and what we can, going forward, think about them. So Ajay bhai, do you want to bring up the questionnaire on the screen? Do you
Yeah, why
want
don't I bring up so that, and I want to, what I want to do is, how do you want to do this? So there are multiple ways to do it. I think you want to go over some of the responses first, and then I go over some of the ones that I have highlighted.
so i
Is that
think
how you
i
want to
think
do it?
I was going to go down from top to bottom, and there were some columns that you had looked at, and there are some columns that I had looked at.
So
So
I have actually marked the columns that I was going
yeah,
to
yeah,
talk
me
about.
too, me too.
Is,
I have
is
marked the
that
column.
so? In that, your version may be different. So you want to share your screen?
Actually, yeah, I can share my screen, and but there might be places where we both may want to talk simultaneously, so I
Sure,
don't.
sure. But why don't you take a lead? and then
Okay.
and the next question I'll take a lead. So why don't you take a lead on the question, um, whichever you want to start with. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm gonna. Do you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So what you
It's kind
see
of
here?
hard to read, so you may want to just zoom in and show only the comments you want to show, if it's possible,
Yeah.
or you can just read out the name of the candidate and the comments, whichever works for you.
Yeah. So do you see the names clearly now? Do you see this name, Stephen Slauski
Yes,
or
I can.
Kathleen
Yes,
Brown?
I can.
Okay. So what you see here is the candidate name in this column, and then obviously their email address and their party representation and the district they represent. Uh, Also, these are the questions. So, first question was, tell us who you are and why you want to serve in Congress. The second question was, what is your theory on how society ultimately changes for the better? And the third question was, what are the top three priorities of your campaign? Fourth being, you know, uh, tell us about there are growing instances of targeted. Oh, sorry, I think I lost it here. Yeah, there are growing instances of targeted hate against Hindus in America. What do you believe is the role of elected officials in addressing it? The fifth being, given the recent cases of students for fair admission versus president and fellows of Harvard College, there is a case going on in the Supreme Court. You all must be following. So it was basically between merit-based admission policies versus race-focused admission policies. And then again, currently the green card process is highly delayed for Hindu Americans, mostly because they come from India, majority of them, for high skilled professionals. So what was their position on that? Do you support human rights of persecuted religious minorities in authoritative theocracies? No, primarily focused on Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. What are your views on UN foreign policy and interference in sovereign rights of India? So, and of course, there is renewable energy, gun control, and of course, abortion. Key issues that are relevant to not just Hindu Americans, but all Americans in this election. So, I marked a few of them, and I will go down, from top to bottom, Ajay bhai. So, let us look at one, which is Stephen Slauson, who is from California 13, Republican candidate. So this question I really liked in terms of how he answered, and I liked it because in the question where you ask, there are growing instances of targeted hate against Hindus in America. What do you believe is the role of elected officials? Here, I think the way he answered in a very short way, it tells you a lot of things about him. One thing that it tells you is that he has a significant Asian American population. So California 13, I believe, would be, has a very diverse Asian community. And the fact that he says he wants to include Hindus in that campaign tells you that he has a situational awareness of where Hindus stand in terms of their social and philosophical aspects, and considers them as part of a larger Asian American uh, narrative rather than a South Asian narrative. So I think that was the reason I highlighted this. And these are nuances that you gather from people. Much of it is because these people are from certain areas and know a lot of people from community in that area, and the adjacencies they have in those areas. So another question I thought was pretty relevant on this topic, which is growing anti-Hindu hate, is this person who I believe had a very Vinny Mendoza. So he's a Democrat from Louisiana, and he's running for a Senate seat. Uh, Here in this question, he said, while we continue electing and supporting white supremacist leaders, so this is a person from Louisiana who is a Democrat. So obviously he's from a southern state. He wants to address the race issue. He's looking at it through the prism of race. And he himself says all minorities in the US will continue to suffer because of white supremacism. That's what he says. And he then says, as a Native American Mayan Indian, I have experienced hate acts all my life, and in one of the reasons why I want to better represent minorities. So, a question about Hindus, in a question about Hindus and anti-Hindu hate, Vinny Mendoza from Louisiana actually brings up his own Native American, Mayan, Native, Indian tradition as a comparison. So, what it tells us is that He looks at it through the prism of race, and he sees anti-Hindu hate as a race issue in America, and also the fact that he brings in Native American and brings an adjacency to Indians, because I'm pretty sure he's aware of the fact that majority of the Hindus are Indians as well, of Indian origin as well. So that is an interesting point. I thought made a lot of sense from this person. And coming from Louisiana, I can see why he brings it in the perspective of white supremacy, because it's a southern state, had a history of racism. uh, Not necessarily the fact, I am not saying I agree with him, I'm just saying these are interesting observations. Then
Yeah,
again,
so I just want to say, Narsimha Chariji said that no candidate will answer so many or any questions. Keep it simple. And I think we had about 10 questions, right? 9 to 10 questions. And I have seen similar surveys from other faiths where there and other interest groups. They have a lot more questions, and they ask for a lot more detailed answers. So I appreciate the comment Nasimaji is making, but I would suggest that he look into other similar surveys which candidates routinely fill out. This is not for someone who is seeking, votes. This is not an overwhelming number of questions. It will take less time to fill out this survey than to for a candidate to actually reach out to Hindu constituents in their congressional district or Senate, in their state in case of Senate. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, this is not an overwhelming ask of any candidate.
correct. So there I just wanted to bring these two questions, which is on Hindu, for growing anti-Hindu hate in America. This answer was pretty interesting, and this is from Troy Carter, who is a Constitution candidate. So it's a third party candidate, and not Republican, not Democrat, a Constitution party. I believe they believe in the purity of the Constitution in the utmost way they interpret it. And in his description, he said, "I am a blackballed, cancelled, censored, straight, white, conservative alpha male." So I'm also going to read you a question and answer that sound pretty politically incorrect or out of norm. So alpha male who wants to serve the U.S. Senate to restore the American birthright, uphold the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and expose the hypocrisy of the Rhino Republicans and the Democratic left. So obviously he's to the right of Troy Carter, is to the right of the Republican Party as well in Louisiana. He's running for a Senate seat. So his answer to the question of growing anti-Hindu hate is pretty fascinating. He says there is not growing Hindu hate. Okay, there is nothing like that. These are staged events to make this group look like the victim, just like blacks and the LGBTQ community. So the racism targeted at blacks or LGBTQ community, in his opinion, is also staged. So is anti-Hindu campaigns. The role of elected official is to speak truth, not pander, and support the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and never worry about who you offend. That part, it's a very standard statement from conservatives, I believe. So this is this is a fascinating. I just thought it was fascinating that he clearly says there is nothing called anti-Hindu hate. Obviously, this is all made up, and it's staged. Then the next one is also pretty fascinating, because in the next one, on the same question of anti-Hindu hate, his name is Daniel Wassmer, and he's from Pennsylvania, and he's also representing a third party, Keystone Party. Uh, so Keystone is in Pennsylvania, I believe. Ajay bhai,
It
right?
is Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Yes.
Keystone is a city, small town in Pennsylvania.
No, Keystone, Pennsylvania is called Keystone State.
Okay. Yeah. So I figured it had some relationship, because I've seen the name Keystone associated with
Yes.
Pennsylvania quite.
We are the Keystone State.
There you go. So here he says, I have studied the Bhagavad Gita as well as the other religions of India. Nothing saddens me more than to know that Hindus, a religion of peace, are subject to hate in the US. The primary role of US elected official is to denounce any form of violence to begin with, but moreover to specifically ensure that individuals feel protected in America. That's a very good answer in my opinion. I mean,
That's a very good answer.
that's from a
And
person.
that clearly shows that this is a candidate who actually can relate to Hindus.
Exactly. So now that's an example of an answer where that American Hindus should be impressed with, or I am impressed with, could be impressed with. I shouldn't say what other people should think. Uh, and they can consider this as something that is important to for a candidate like this. So, maybe we should start engaging with this person. Maybe there is something we can do going forward with them. So, this person, there are other questions also, Ajay bhai, that Ajay bhai will go through and I will go through. I don't know how much time we have, Ajay bhai. I mean, at this
So
rate,
we can, we have about 20 minutes, so we can quickly go over. Why don't I take the next set and then turn it back over to you?
okay, Ajay bhai.
Unless
Yeah,
you're still going through the same question.
I just wanted to finish this question because
Yeah,
this
yeah,
question.
please. Go ahead. I thought you were done with that.
No,
I'm
no,
so
no, I'm
sorry.
only
Go ahead,
halfway
please.
through.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, please go. Keep going. Keep going.
So this is another one, and I'm going. I know I did not pick too many of them, but it's just so many people who responded
Yeah,
back.
yeah. No,
And
so
just
many people have responded, and we are trying to do justice.
yeah, Christopher Mann, who is a congressional candidate from Oregon, one Republican. So Oregon is a state that is pretty left of center, and a Republican candidate from Oregon most likely is going to be more centrist than a Democrat probably from Texas. So or probably on the same scale. Yeah. So just something to be a situational awareness. So this person is a veteran, and so his name is Christopher Mann, Republican from Oregon, one congressional seat. So, to the question of growing anti Hindu hate, he says, much like the problems in our country, we need to reverse the action of radicals. So, he clearly identifies, and because I think he has a military background, he identifies that the Hindus are being targeted by radicals, which means extremists, religious fundamentalists. And the fact that he doesn't define exactly who they are also shows that he has a broader understanding of it. It could be left extreme radicals, Christian right wing, or Islamist. In many cases, it's the Islamists who target Hindus. Then the line is very important. The Hindu people are not radicals. So that's another important data point that this person seems to have gathered. Thankfully, Hindu people want and worship peace. Politicians need to speak about this in front of microphones and spend time in those communities. That's another question, very well answered. Very in such a short sentence. This person, Christopher Mann, Republican, Oregon, one. Uh, Very good answer in my opinion. As succinct and short as he could be. So I'm just going to keep browsing through uh, some of the names. There's a lot of good answers. So, in such a short period of time, and we had so many questions, 8 or 10 questions. So, I'm going to go to the next one, which is same question on Hindu phobia. And this is from Max Miller, Republican from Ohio 7. Okay. So, Ohio is a very important state, as you all may know. So, in the same question on Hindu phobia, he says, as a Jewish American, I unfortunately have experienced anti Semitism. The role of elected official is to not pour gas on the fire, but to point out and educate others on how targeted harassment left unchecked spreads like wildfire, and that elected officials need to speak out against those who spread it and promote it. Another good example person is the fact that he understands anti-Hindu hate through the prism of anti-Semitism, which is very important and relevant because a lot of the groups that target Hindus in America at this point are also the groups that spread anti-Semitism in big sections of the society. So I thought that was a good answer. The next one I picked because I just think that this person has a very generic understanding, and this person is uh, again from Oregon, Republican, and he's from Senate seat, Joe Ray Perkins. And this guy has a very generic. He says, unfortunately, one cannot legislate morality, which is pretty interesting. However, educators need to stop with the CRT, which is critical race theory, teaching our children that if you are white, you are bad. So he brings up this. He responds to this whole Hindu phobia issue from a CRT perspective, which I believe is not relevant. But I wanted to read this out to you because this person has something in his mind. I'm pretty sure it's relevant in his state, and we may agree with him on many of that. But it was not an answer that that was relevant to anti-Hindu hate in this country. Uh, then again, this person was very interesting because of the who this person was. And her name is Angela Grabowski. She's a Republican running from Indiana. And I picked this one because I thought that the answer was pretty interesting based on who this person is. So she's an immigrant from the former Soviet Union, came to America in 1989, obviously when Soviet Union broke up. Feel that the country has given a lot of opportunities and I'm trying to pay it back. So that's a very interesting bio to have. And she is running as a Republican candidate from Indiana 7, Angela Grabowski. And her answer, I think, is important because she talks about knowledge and education to counter hate crime. So she said, first of all, is to acknowledge that hate crime exists. Very good point. Then continue educating people on cultural differences and similarities. So that is something that as Hindu Pact we have been trying to do, other Hindu organizations. It is important to educate people, even those who hate us, who we are as Hindus and what we believe in and what our history is and who we represent ideologically. Geography and anthropology should be a part of school curriculum. The earlier we introduce world cultures to kids, the better. That I thought was a very good answer. And I think, Ajay bhai, this person, Angela Grabowski, if there is anybody from Indiana 7, Republican, something to look into. So I shall go down now, and I think we are almost at the end of that question. Okay, one more. Uh, I think this is similar to the first one. Comparing Hindus, anti-Hindu hate, bringing it as part of Asian hate crime. So I thought this was a similar one. Uh, that is about it for this question on Hindu phobia, and I think I read about 7 or 8 of the candidates. Uh, I just think these point to very important thought processes that are out there in the society across America, and it is a good cue for us Hindus who are into policy and advocacy to understand how Americans think about us, so that we can address issues better. So Ajay bhai, I'll unshare and hand it over to you.
So thank you. I have a couple of questions here, and Ram Tiwari ji, for those who are following the chat, I'll read the questions for those who are not following the chat and who are listening to this without actually looking at the screen. Let me turn this off. And so Ram Tiwari asked the question that would it be easier for the candidates if it were yes or no answers? I think, and I responded on the chat. I think Ramji, I think the problem with yes or no questions is that it does not give the candidates an opportunity to give nuanced answers. And if you look at the answers that we have received, and the candidates have spent substantial amount of time in responding to questions. When it comes to questions such as abortion or educational opportunities, or even a simple questions like green card, or these are not yes or no answers, because they're nuanced answer. Even gun control, these are nuanced answers where people would like to actually clarify what they're trying to say. And that is why we don't generally give out in most of the surveys like this are not just black and white yes or no, but they give the candidates an opportunity to kind of give more nuanced answers. And
Also,
I
I
think
wanted
that
to add.
actually does a service to the candidate, because it really helps them present their view in a more in a more substantial way. There's also a question from Ram Tiwari ji saying that does HAF have or any have a similar survey? As far as we know, Ramji, they do not. None of
We
the
cannot
Hindu
speak on
organizations
behalf of
have this.
HAF. We are a completely different organization. So I haven't seen anything from
No,
HAF.
we have not seen anything, and not only that, I think the uh, the uh, second question that was asked, which is about vetting process. So we don't generally do a vetting. That's left to the political action committees, and a non-profit generally presents both the views and let the candidates decide. So that's the difference between. And HF is also a non-profit, so I don't believe they have vetting process either.
I don't
So that
think they have a
comments.
vetting process, but I think what you see here in this website is one of the largest decentralized organic vetting processes that you can have.
Correct.
Because what it does, and I mentioned this in the beginning itself, that it is a community driven. So the community, the voter, has a questionnaire to fill himself about his candidates, or herself about her candidate. Then the questionnaire is there, and then of course we analyze the candidate through 4 5 bills that they have been voted on, if they have been in the Congress. If not, then they get the benefit of doubt. So there is this 3 step process of vetting a candidate that is largely decentralized and public driven from the Hindu community through this website. I do not think that has ever been done before, or it has been done this year also by any group or individual.
I mean, it is a substantial amount of work, money investment, all of that, in order to create an automated website like this that covers every constituency. There's a question from Mohan Dadlani ji, asking, is Tulsi Gabbard supporting the Hindu community? Now, I have not seen anything from Tulsi Gabbard about support for Hindu community in terms of this election cycle. So
So
unless
also
I missed it.
I think that's the question would can be asked differently. The question can be asked: is Tulsi Gabbard supporting the issues that are important to Hindu community? Because what do you mean by supporting the Hindu community? Is she supporting Hindu candidates? Is she supporting the issues that are important to Hindus? So the question to that, answer to that would be: I do believe that Tulsi has taken positions that are relevant and important to Hindu community. But Tulsi at this point is not running for any seat, or she has a show now on TV. So I think she's addressing into issues that are important to Hindu communities, but I don't think she has given out any specific support on the basis of a candidate's religion.
So that I am going to with that I'm going to quickly run down the responses that we got for the question. Given the recent case of students for fair admission versus president and fellows of Harvard College, currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court, it was actually brought up for arguments a couple of weeks ago. What are your thoughts on merit-based admissions policies versus race-focused admissions policy? And this is the reason we bring this issue up is because this disproportionately impacts the Asian American students, especially and prominent, more predominantly Hindu students as well. So here are the answers, and I'm going to quickly run down some of them. From Kathleen Brown, who is a Democrat running from Texas 13, says that merit-based admissions should take precedence, but with the acknowledgement that we don't all start from the same place. Overcoming obstacles is meritorious too. And I don't know how one would do that, but she advocates for that. I would go to Carla Marlinga, who is a Democrat running from Michigan 10, who says that ultimately merit should take precedence, but admission officers should be allowed to engage in setting racial and ethnic goals, which can be used to break a tie between the applicants of approximately the same qualifications. Reliance solely on the grade and test scores is inherently misleading, since human beings are more than grades and scores. Now, so that this is where I think the nuanced answers make a difference. I would let the constituents in Texas 13, or sorry, Michigan 10, in Kala Marlinga's constituency actually make up their mind on this, as to how they would, how it would be, what all the nuances of race and ethnicity, and how they would evaluate and how they would make the system still fair. That is left to that. There's an interesting response from Chris Erickson, who is an independent candidate from Vermont, and he says there should be no race-based admission. Having no race-based admission will encourage more people to start more colleges and universities and go into competition for students. Having race-based admission is a weak way of saying some other groups can't make better college for a better university. And then he goes on to say that why bother with Harvard? And maybe there is a point in that. Vinnie Mendoza, who is a Democratic candidate from Louisiana, says that if you work hard, I believe if you work hard and study hard, you should have the same opportunity to compete for scholarships based on your merits. If you are not as smart as top 5%, perhaps you should consider serving in U.S. Armed Forces to obtain free education like I did. Very nice, very interesting answer.
Vinny Mendoza is the same person who said he's of Mayan Native American origin, and
Right.
related it to the Hindu.
And then it's a very, very, very interesting answer. No, most candidates have not answer, personalize the answer to this level, right? Here's an answer from Michael Delaney from Oklahoma, who's an independent, said, I believe a student body should reflect the nation. I'm pro affirmative action until the student body reflection is normalized as a diverse admissions as diverse admissions annually. And I don't know how to gauge this. I believe, and then it goes about
No, so it is.
aggressiveness
So
and all that.
basically, he's
So
saying,
that this sounds like a quota system to me.
yeah, basically he's saying if a city has 20% Asians and 30% blacks, then the university should have the exact same number, and that means that there is no merit base in it. I mean, you just have to fill the seats based on the numbers you have in your city or state. I think that brings ghettoization to the society in a significant way.
Yeah. So here is the one I picked from Vanessa Enoch, a Democrat running from Ohio, and Ohio being a battleground state, every vote matters. And Vanessa Enoch says, I believe that both race focused and merit based admission policies are necessary. I believe that colleges should first, at a minimum, offer slots equivalent to percentage of population of racial groups, and secondarily, offer slots based on merit. This would account for need to admit on equitable basis. I thought the goal of education was to produce the best possible doctors or best possible engineers and all of that. Now, if someone can have a nuanced argument and they would say that, look, we are going to invest more money in preschool and and high school and in elementary school and middle school and reading and writing, and offer extra training in places in the communities where there's traditionally lower percentage of people going to colleges. We would make all the extra facilities made available, and rise and raise the standards, rather raise the standards for everyone by offering opportunities where none exist. But to say that I'm going to fix the percentage and then have people compete for those percentage based
Imagine
on race,
having a basketball team based on that same concept, Ajay.
with my height, I would welcome that. So that
Me too. That's why I'm
I
saying.
may get. I think there is a I believe I do believe so that we need to make opportunities available to everyone. But at the end of the day, if you are sick, what kind of doctor are you going to pick? At the end of the day, if you want to put a spaceship up, what kind of engineer you are going to pick uh, to design the spaceship? So these are the kinds of issues. And again, I'm more than 100% for providing facilities and grants and extra funding to communities and regions and districts where people who have been traditionally deprived of opportunities. I want to make sure that everyone rises to the standards that 21st and 22nd century are going to need. But and we also got some very honest answers. So here's an answer I picked from Paul Tonko, who is a Democrat running from New York 20. He said, my team and I need to learn more about it. And this is an honest answer coming from a candidate. I will continue to support opportunities for all ethnicities. And it goes on to say diversity is our strength and all that. You know, but this is an honest answer. I need to learn more about it. Why not? I mean, you don't have to have all the answers, right?
So,
So
Ajay
that
bhai,
with
there is a
that,
question from audience question from Dr. Shardanand. Uh,
okay.
and
Shadananji, we know well.
I
Please
know
go ahead.
Dr. Shardanand very well, so I want to make sure we answer this question. Uh, is there a list of candidates endorsed by Hindu Pact? So, Shardanand Hindu Pact, Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective is a project of BHP America. BHP America, because it is a 501c3, we cannot endorse any particular candidates as a 501c3. We can do analysis and we can do advocacy based on analysis and gives policy suggestions. So what you see here with us doing is we are analyzing the candidates, analyzing their opinions, their positions, but we cannot endorse any particular candidate as a 501c3.
So here's an interesting one, Utsada, from Richard Wise, who's a Green Party candidate from Pennsylvania. And this answer, I picked this one because it's really interesting. He says, as an Asian American, so he says that
Ajay,
he.
repeat the question for our
Oh yeah, the
audience.
question
Every
here
time,
is that do
every
you
two, three, you can't
support?
just
Do you
repeat it.
support? There's a case in Supreme Court against the Harvard College where the plaintiffs, who are Asian Americans, are saying that they were deprived of admission at Harvard because they of their Asian American heritage, and Harvard unjustly, unfairly restricts the number of Asian Americans to a percentage. I think it's 26% or so, and they think that that is discriminatory. And I think that is the that is the and so we asked the question, what do you think about what do you think about about this particular case? If you were to be uh, you know asked to take a position, would you vote in favor of the plaintiffs who are Asian American, or would you vote in favor of Harvard College, which says that we want to have a race and ethnicity? They don't call it quota, but a balance in an admission class. So that's the question. So this one is an interesting one because so the Richard Weiss says, looking at the case and the applicable law, it appears to me that the plaintiffs should win. As an Asian American, my own son may have suffered discrimination while applying to college. His mother is Chinese Indonesian. That having been said, I am not convinced that SAT scores correlate with success in college or in life. And also, diversity is desirable, also, although not alone, but among other qualities. And then he goes on to say that, yeah, we need to find other ways. And then he makes a really interesting point, Utsada, that sometimes get lost, that a lot of the Ivy League schools have about anywhere between 10 and 20% of the candidates who they pick are either donor funded, sorry, either the children of major donors or are legacy students. That means whose parents already went to one of these Ivy League schools. And he's saying, well, if it's only merit based, then why are these people getting admission? And so that I don't know if you
That's a
follow,
very valid point. That's a very,
it's a
very
very
valid
valid point. And in fact, if you remember, a lot of the Indian politicians and businessmen who send their kids to Harvard and other Ivy League schools, including people like, I don't want to be political, but people like Rahul Gandhi, who and his parents and his grandparents, who at least one of his grandparents, who went to these Ivy League schools in US or went to elite schools in UK, never graduated from there, but but somehow got admission there. So that's a really interesting issue, right?
I completely agree, and I think see, these are the kind of answers that really tell you that the person has thought through the question, and and that's a good policy makers. To have these kinds of nuances is a good policy makers head to have, and you want people like this to win and be in positions of power.
Yeah, because they're thinking people, right? I mean, regardless of the political party. Here is an interesting one, Utsoda, from Cameron Parsons, who is a Democrat running from Tennessee, one. And Cameron Parsons says race-focused admission policies were enacted to address a disproportionate admission ratio, which resulted in fewer minority admissions. While this corrects that problem, many feel that this is to the disadvantage of students with higher merits. This is an interesting problem, but I have not identified a good solution. We need more solutions to the problem. The role of the and then he goes on to say the role of the federal government and all that. But I really find this answer to be well thought out. Even saying that I don't have a good answer indicates that the candidate has actually thought through this before filling out the answer. And also, in interest of time, I'm going to stop with. I just wanted to give you the flavor of this, and I'm going to stop here because there are multiple answers. But and I just want to say one thing, and that is one more is a Democrat, Jasmine Crockett, who is from Texas 30, saying, I'm a daughter of a teacher and who knows firsthand the benefits of strong education I provide, and then goes on to relate her position. So, these are perspectives of people who who have some living experience about the educational field, right? And she of course advocates for diversity and richness in education. Um, so I will stop there and I'll go quickly to the next one. And I have very few in the next one that I've selected. The next question, Utsada, is the green card process for the highly skilled professionals, and this disproportionately affects the Hindus. And here is a candidate from the Constitution Party from Utah 3 says, I favor ending all immigration until essentially all presented documents, the undocumented aliens have been located and registered, which is about how many million, Sada? 10 million?
Not just that, though. So the fact is that this person actually conflates between people who are here legally through the
Yeah.
proper immigration channels and people who are here illegally. And these are the kinds of people, you got to be aware of, you got to know, and you got to educate them. And
Yeah.
that's the reason, we need to have these people. We need to know these people and how they think.
So Chris Erickson Soda says yes. He was an independent from Vermont. Says yes. For example, here in Vermont, where I live, there's a shortage of medical doctors, and then he goes on to say that why these are important. And then quickly going through Frank Croft, who is a libertarian from Florida 13, says, although I do support that, I think that the entire immigration system needs to be changed, and we have a convoluted process, which makes perfect sense because it is a convoluted process. Michael Kalagias from Arkansas 3 says, I support issuing green cards expeditiously to any immigrant desiring long term residency in the US, regardless of the skill role provided. They can pass a background check showing they're under threat to national security. And he's against the countrywide quota. Here's Bill Prempe from New Jersey 9, and I picked New Jersey because it is one of the states where Hindus are facing a lot of challenges, especially originating from some of the Democratic lawmakers in Tenek City Council. And here it says, and the Democratic Party unit. And so Bill Prempe says, absolutely, I'm a first generation American. My parents migrated into US and sponsored 14 of my relatives to USA. One of my relatives had to wait 17 years for his process to complete. I believe the immigration system requires more resources to expedite immigration process. This is a lived experience. This is an experience that Hindus can relate to. Ritesh Tandon, who is running as a Republican from California 17, says, removing country quota will be my first priority. It took me 15 years to get green card. I understand the pain. I will fix this crap. Very
So,
colorful,
Ajay
very
bhai, while
nice.
you are on Ritesh Tandon, I also wanted to get two other questions he answered about Hindus' foreign policy issues, because you already were there. So, can you go back to Ritesh Tandon? Uh,
Yeah, right here.
so so if you look at the other questions Ritesh has answered, which is to the right, about growing Hindu phobia, and the two questions I just wanted to make sure people understood was, do you support human rights of persecuted religious minorities in authoritative states like religious autocracies like Afghanistan, Pakistan? So see, this, the way Ritesh answered that is an example of how, because Ritesh Tandon is a Hindu, and a practicing Hindu, and he comes from an understanding of these issues as somebody who is originally immigrant from that part of the world. You can see from his answer how he has addressed it in a very direct way. So that is another example of, how some candidates who have lived experiences, who have personal family and understanding of issues, can respond in ways that you would like it. So I just wanted to highlight that
No,
from.
and while we are at it, I think we should highlight Ritesh's other answer also. This is something that we have talked about in this show, and he has said U.S. should not interfere in in India's and as far as foreign policy is concerned in in India's internal affairs. And he said that I support CAA, which is the uh, the Citizenship Amendment Act of India, the National Registry of Citizenship, Farm Bill Article 370, which took away the uh, temporary special status that Kashmir enjoyed. And he goes on to say, my opponent Ro Khanna, uh, who is a Pakistani caucus member, oppose all of these initiatives. So I think it is for Hindus in his constituency, California 17, to decide. But these are the issues that a lot of American Hindus can identify with. And I'll leave it at that. So that we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go over all the answers here. We'll find some way of making this available. But we have people who are open border advocates. We have people who want who support the dreamers, who have children of immigrants, who should be given opportunities. And there's another one, which is Dakla, which many people are not aware of. These are the
Dalka,
children of
Dalka, Dalka.
Dalka, I'm sorry, Dalka, where the children, adult children of H1B who lose the status. Here is another Hindu candidate, Rishi Kumar, who is a Democratic candidate from California 16, and he's saying, it is my priority to give immigration to highly skilled immigrants. And I will stop here, so that there are many questions, some very well thought out. For example, even among Republican Party, you can see here Dan Matthews, who is a Republican running from the Washington, second congressional district of Washington, says green cards for highly skilled professional H1B program, so that the time to obtain one is decreased as much as possible. This is important because Seattle area and Washington State overall is a magnet for high tech jobs. After Silicon Valley and California, that area has a lot of large companies, and I think that for a candidate in that area to say that could be very significant. That's the same thing that uh, a Republican, Keith Swank, who is Washington 10, also makes a similar case. But he also, it's a nuanced answer, because he says also, I would like people who are born and brought up in US to go to STEM education, and that's a fair point, right? Um, and so I'll stop here, Utsada, on this question. I mean, there's a lot more I can do, but I think it's people get a flavor of the kind of answers that we have got.
So what is,
There is
Adibai, what I wanted to
there is
highlight is that we have more than 100 candidates who responded back. This is one of the highest number of responses we have received, or any Hindu organization has received. In the past, I remember other Hindu organizations would get answers from 10, 15, 20, 30 candidates, 50 candidates, because it was a manually driven process. This was automated process. The whole setup is extremely streamlined, and I think, you know I don't, do you, Ajay bhai, we also spent a lot of money on this.
Yeah, so I never get tired of saying that. So that brings me to the regular segments of this show, and the first one is our Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. So the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. What do you think it will be? Any guesses?
Money so that we can recover some of.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं.
And so, any guesses before I surprise you?
No, I started saying that we spent tremendous amount of money on HinduVote, and it's an architecture that can grow. It requires work, but it can be used again and again. But it's something I really feel that our community, we are a community who are sometimes driven by reaction rather than proactive approaches. But this was one of the proactive approaches that we took. Other being that we actually got a resolution in the House on 1971 genocide recognition. Uh, Both of these shows a shift in the way we approach things, and we address uh, both issues that are targeted against us as well as issues that we want educationally to move forward. Both of these involved a lot of effort and resources. So we want people to understand that they can support us. And Ajay, you have Hindustan Times.
Yeah, I was going to the next one, but please go
Yeah,
ahead.
so do support us, help us with money, and so that we can continue to build on these things and make it into a long term project that can be even more educational going forward. and become a tool for the community all the time, year after year. And I also
Utsada,
want
I just want to say, Utsada, I want to add to what you just said. I think that if we were to do this right for the presidential elections, to enhance this website and make it more comprehensive, and we have a lot of ideas on how to make this 10 times better than what it is today, which is absolutely unique. No other religion that religious advocacy organization has anything close to this. And what I want to say is that we can make it multiple orders of magnitude better if we have the right funding. And I think we can. I think the amount of money that is required to make this better is anywhere between $25,000 and $50,000 for 2024 presidential elections. So, so I would urge the community to support this initiative. So that I want to go to the next segment, the Hindu Good News of the Week, and I want to get your view on this. This is Hindu Good News of the Week, Utsada. Any thoughts on this? So there is a madrasa in Kashi, which is teaching Sanskrit. What do you make of it?
I mean, I do not have enough information based on this article to make a judgment on whether it is good or bad. In my understanding, a madrasa means they are also teaching the Quran and Islamic jurisprudence and Sharia. If that is what the madrasa is, then whether you teach it in Urdu, Arabic,
No, but as
Farsi.
a separate language, if they were to teach as a separate language, if they're teaching Sanskrit, in addition
That's what
to,
I'm trying to say, Ajay bhai. My
yeah,
point here is that if they are preaching, if they're still promoting Sharia through the madrasa, I don't know what exactly they're teaching. If it's a madrasa, then ideally these people they also teach Sharia law and Quran and Hadith. If they're doing all of that, then I'm not that impressed with just adding Sanskrit as a language to this. If they are teaching Bhagavad Gita, if they're teaching our Upanishads or any of our Shastras, I like it, because at least there is a diversity of opinion, and thus the knowledge of the language Sanskrit is important for everybody. It is the most ancient language in the world that is still in use, and it is also the mother of almost 80% of the global languages that are spoken. So I think it's a good thing, but madrasa itself is not a good thing. So that's where I am. I'm not elated by it, Ajay bhai. I don't know about you.
no, I think that the fact that they even include Sanskrit, I think is worthy of acknowledgement. That yeah, there is we have a common root where all the people who are born and brought up in the Indian subcontinent have common roots, and I think that acknowledgement is worth something.
But Ajay bhai, just to play devil's advocate here, you do realize that even Islamists in Turkey greatly take pride in the fact that the Turkish language has Sanskrit roots. Chechens,
Well,
radicals in Chechen,
yes.
Sunni jihadis in Chechnya take pride in the fact that Chechen language had Sanskrit roots. So we have to be very careful about what we
So,
cannot.
I agree with that, but that Indian and Indian subcontinent Muslims, by and large, never take pride in anything Hindu. That is the difference between Turkish and Iranian. Iranian Muslims have a lot of affinity towards the pre-Islamic culture in Iran, and Turkish do as well. But I don't see any Indian Muslim, India, and I include Greater India, which includes Pakistan and Bangladesh, and I don't see people taking pride in their Hindu roots in those countries. And I think that's the difference between Turkey, Iran, and India. Something to think about. Utsada, with that, I want to bring this up and get your view on this, because who better to weigh in on this Hindu phobe of the week than you? And maybe you'll not find this Hindu phobe of the week. Let's see what you have to say. that I want to show you this and get your view on it. J.D. Vance is a Republican candidate from Ohio. His wife, Usha Vance, is from India. And here is the cartoon. This is, there's, of course, there's a baseball team, Cleveland Browns, and they changed the name to Cleveland Guardians. Cleveland Indians, baseball team, Cleveland Indians. We changed the name to Cleveland Guardians. And this is the cartoon that came in one of the papers in Ohio. And it says, only Indians name change I support is my wife's to Senator J.D. Vance's spouse. Now, what do you think about this?
So here the cartoon is trying to say that uh, JD Vance's spouse's name is, because it's an Indian name, he's not going to say it anymore because it's Indian. And I didn't understand. It's too nuanced. I don't think it's.
So,
I
American Kahani did a story on this. Usha Chilukuri is an Indian, but not that Indian. Ohio Republican Senate candidate lays racism charge against cartoon. So you can see that it's not just the fact that they're conflating the Indian American Indians and the Indians from in Asian Indians in this case, but I think it is like saying that the ethnicity of his wife, which happens to be Indian, is a fair game in this kind of attack, which I believe is not fair. And it would not have happened if it was, for example, a Muslim candidate. It would not have happened, for example, it was a candidate of some other ethnicity or nationality. But Hindus in America are a fair game.
So if JD Vance's wife was a Muslim, this would have been a huge controversy. And the Democrats would be falling head over heels, condemning it. I would assume, and I think it would be true to say that it would have been this exact same reaction if it was a Jewish American, because anti-Semitism, that would be considered anti-Semitic. And I think this should be considered Hindu-phobic. But having said that, I think during election times these things happen. We need to point it out. We need to call it out. So I agree with you, Ajay bhai. This is Hindu-phobic. We need to call it out. And but I at the same time feel that this is sometimes it happens. We will call it out, but what can you do?
But we won't accept it.
We won't accept it. Yes.
And so that thank you again for taking time. I know you're a busy guy with a lot of interviews and other engagements that are waiting for you. But thank you for doing this. I appreciate it, and I think this was. I hope that this becomes a resource, not just the HinduVote website, but this show becomes a resource for the community as they go out and vote on Tuesday. So one thing we want to urge, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent or Libertarian or Green Party supporters, please go out and vote. And
I just want to add a couple of trends that I noticed in all the different 110, 115 responses. There are clear trends that you can observe. One of the trends is that inflation is a key player in people's concerns. People are concerned about inflation and the cost of living. People are concerned on foreign policy issue. People are concerned about America's role as if in the global space. And many people are, many candidate responses were that they were quite unhappy with the way America seems to be interfering in global issues. So that seems to be a trend. I'm pointing out some of the trends before we leave, based on all the 100 and plus 106, 108 answers that we got. So inflation is very important to people. America's global approach under Biden administration is of concern to people. A lot of people responded to reducing our efforts in interfering in global wars. That was a concern. And third one, which was very interesting also, is that a lot of people believe in America that immigration needs to be supported as long as it is legal and it is done for the interest of America. So whenever it is interest of America,
Merit based.
So that is another observation we saw. January 6th did not show up. I was expecting a lot of left leaning or Democrat leaning candidates to go on and on and on. If you watch TV channels, you will feel like that's an important issue, like January 6th thing. It didn't come up as much. There were a couple of people who brought it up, but it wasn't that important in people's minds, at least from the candidates' perspective, in candidates' minds. So, there's a disconnect between what I see in the media and what I see in the responses. So that is the overall trend I just wanted to. But we need a lot of work to do on HinduVote.
Perfect summary, Utsada. Perfect summary. Thank you very much. And with that, we close the show for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This show will be available, of course, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can watch it anytime. And we will see you next week. We come live. This is HinduLounge. HinduLounge is brought to you by HinduPact. HinduLounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. And in HinduLounge, we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. So, Utsada, with that, see you next week.
See you next week.
Okay. Namaste. Thank you for joining.